Hey guys, tonight we slip into ancient China, where moonlight glints off bamboo groves and the air hums with secrets of a world before paper. Picture yourself in a bustling Han Dynasty village, sandals kicking up dust as scribes haul heavy bamboo strips to record the emperor's decrees. It's a time when writing is a grind, and you're about to discover how one invention changed everything. Fair warning, if you tried lugging those bamboo records yourself, you probably won't survive this backache. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and local time in the comments. I love knowing where you're drifting off from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand in a Han Dynasty marketplace, circa 200 BCE, where merchants hawk silk and spices under flickering oil lamps. Writing is everywhere: tax records, poetry, even grocery lists. But it's a nightmare. Before paper, China's scribes rely on clunky materials like wood, bone, and turtle shells. Oracle bones, etched with divinations, are a mainstream hit. Archaeologists have dug up over 100,000 of these from the Shang Dynasty, inscribed with early Chinese script. But they're not exactly portable. You try scratching a message into a bone shard, and it's like carving your name into a rock with a dull spoon. Quirky tidbit: some scribes used bronze vessels for fancy inscriptions, which is like writing your diary on a gold-plated toaster. Impressive, but absurd. Historians still argue whether these early methods stunted literacy or pushed scribes to innovate. Either way, you're sweating just watching a courier haul a cart of inscribed bones to the capital. The problem isn't just weight, it's access. Writing materials are for the elite: emperors, priests, and rich landowners. You, a commoner, might never touch a stylus. Bamboo is the go-to for government records, but it's not much better. You see a scholar hunched over, chiseling characters into a wooden slip, muttering about his sore wrists. The air smells of sawdust and ink, a gritty mix that clings to your robe. Joke 1. Why did the scribe quit? His boss kept piling on just one more bone. The Han court churns out thousands of these records yearly, and you realize the system's creaking under its own weight. Something's gotta give. You wander past a fortune teller's stall, where a crowd gawks at a turtle shell cracked with prophetic burns. It's cool, sure, but useless for writing a letter. The shells are sacred, tied to rituals where kings asked ancestors about harvests or wars. You smirk, imagining texting your mom on a turtle shell. Good luck with that data plan. The mainstream fact hits hard. China's early script, with thousands of characters, demands a better medium. Bone and wood can't keep up with a growing empire's needs. The quirky bit, some diviners painted their shells red for extra spiritual pizzazz, like bedazzling your laptop for better Wi-Fi. Historians debate if this ritual focus delayed practical writing tools or inspired them. You feel the tension. China's on the brink of a breakthrough, but you're stuck in this dusty, bone-heavy world for now. As you leave the market, a breeze carries the scent of roasted chestnuts. You glance at a scribe, his fingers stained with ink, and wonder what's coming. The empire's expanding, and so is its paperwork. Bamboo's next on your path, but you're already dreading the haul. Joke 2. What's a scribe's worst nightmare? A paper-cut free life. You're starting to see why paper had to happen. The world you're in is vibrant, but weighed down, literally, by its own words. You trudge toward the bamboo groves, where the real grind awaits. You trudge through a bamboo grove outside a Han Dynasty village, the stalks creaking in the breeze like nature's own wind chimes. The air's thick with the green, earthy scent of cut bamboo, and you're about to learn why this stuff is both a scribe's best friend and worst enemy. Your sandals sink into the soft dirt as you watch workers hack down bamboo with bronze axes, their grunts echoing. These strips are the backbone of China's record-keeping, but good luck carrying a novel's worth without a wheelbarrow. Bamboo is the go-to writing material by 200 BCE, a mainstream fact backed by countless archaeological finds. Think tens of thousands of strips unearthed from Han tombs, inscribed with everything from tax logs to love poems. You pick up a freshly cut strip, about a foot long and an inch wide, and it's heavier than it looks. Scribes shave these down, smooth them, and scratch characters in with a stylus dipped in soot-based ink. It's like writing on a chunky ruler, and you're already feeling carpal tunnel just thinking about it. Joke 1. Why did the bamboo scribe get buff? He was lifting his own words all day. You kneel beside a scribe, his fingers calloused, as he etches a grain shipment order. Each strip holds maybe 20 characters, so a short report could take dozens, tied together with hemp string, like a clunky proto-book. You try bundling a few, and it's like lugging a stack of firewood. Quirky tidbit, some scribes smoke their bamboo strips over a fire to kill bugs and prevent rot, giving their work a faint barbecue vibe. Imagine your homework smelling like a cookout. Historians still argue whether bamboo's durability made it a better choice than fragile alternatives, or just slowed the push for something lighter. You're betting on the latter as your arms ache. The real kicker? transport. You watch a courier load a cart with bamboo bundles, the ox groaning as it lurches forward. A single archive could weigh hundreds of pounds, and you're picturing the emperor's clerks buried under an avalanche of sticks. Moving records across China's vast empire is a logistical nightmare. Think cross-country shipping with no trucks. Joke 2. What's slower than a Han Dynasty mailman? A Han Dynasty mailman with bamboo. You smirk, but the scribe glares, muttering about deadlines. The empire's bureaucracy is booming, and bamboo's struggling to keep up with the flood of edicts, maps, and military orders. You wander deeper into the grove, where workers dry strips in the sun, their surfaces gleaming like pale gold. It's labor-intensive, and you're starting to see why only trained scribes handle this. The mainstream reliance on bamboo shapes everything. Schools teach kids to carve characters, not just write them, and literacy stays locked behind this grueling craft. The quirky bit: some strips were recycled, scraped clean for reuse, like the ancient version of wiping a whiteboard. Scholars debate if this recycling was eco-friendly or just desperate. You feel the weight of it all, literally. Each bundle you pass is a reminder of a system stretched to its limit. As you leave the grove, the sun dips low, casting long shadows. You glance back at the scribe, still scratching away, and wonder how long this can last. Bamboo's tough, but the empire's needs are tougher. Joke 3. Why'd the scribe dream of silk? He wanted to write in style. Speaking of silk, that's where you're headed next. A world of luxury writing that's even less practical. You step onto a dusty path, the bamboo's weight still lingering in your mind, and brace for what's coming. You step to a silk merchant stall in a bustling Han Dynasty city, the air heavy with the musky scent of mulberry and wealth. Vibrant bolts of silk shimmer under lantern light, their colors dancing like a sunset caught in fabric. You're here to see why this luxurious material doubled as a writing surface. And spoiler, it's as impractical as it sounds. Your fingers brush a silk scroll, soft as a whisper, but you're already wincing at the price tag. By 100 BCE, silk is a mainstream writing material for China's elite, a fact confirmed by silk manuscripts found in Mawangdui tombs, inscribed with philosophical texts and maps. You watch a scribe unroll a creamy white sheet, dipping a brush in ink to paint delicate characters. It's beautiful. Each stroke flows like a river, but you can't help noticing the merchant's smug grin. Silk's not for peasants like you. It's for emperors, scholars, and anyone with a fat purse. Joke 1. Why'd the scribe use silk? He wanted his grocery list to flex. You try lifting a silk scroll, and it's light as a feather compared to those bamboo bundles you hauled last time. But here's the catch. Producing silk is a nightmare. You peek into a back room where women boil mulberry leaves and unravel cocoons, their hands red from steaming water. One bolt takes thousands of silkworms, weeks of labor, and enough mulberry trees to deforest a hillside. Quirky tidbit: some silk texts were dyed purple for royal decrees, because nothing says, "Obey me," like writing on a fabric that costs more than your house. Historians still argue whether silk's use in writing was a cultural flex or a practical dead end. You're leaning toward flex, especially when you hear a scribe grumble about ink bleeding through. The bigger issue is access. You wander past a noble's cart where silk scrolls are guarded like gold. Commoners can't afford this, so literacy stays locked in the hands of the rich. You imagine trying to jot a note on silk. Yeah, right. You'd sell your sandals first. Joke 2. What's a silk scribe's biggest fear? A moth invasion. The empire's bureaucracy loves silk for its portability, but it's still a luxury, not a solution. Bamboo's heavy, but at least it's everywhere. Silk's rare, and you're starting to see why it won't scale. You pause by a display of silk maps, their intricate lines charting military routes. They're stunning, but fragile. Spill some tea, and your battle plan's ruined. The mainstream reliance on silk for high-status documents underscores China's sophistication, but also its limits. The quirky bit? Some scribes used silk scraps for practice, like doodling on a designer handbag. Scholars debate if silk's prestige slowed the search for cheaper alternatives or inspired them. You feel the tension. The empire's growing, its records piling up, and silk's just too precious to keep up. As you leave the stall, a breeze carries the scent of jasmine. You glance at a scribe, his brush trembling over silk, and wonder who'll crack this problem. Silk's gorgeous, but it's not the future. Joke 3. Why'd silk lose to paper? It couldn't handle the budget cuts. You step back into the dusty street, the weight of bamboo and the cost of silk still on your mind. Someone's got to invent something better, and you're about to meet the guy who might just do it. You slip into the imperial court of the Han Dynasty around 105 CE, where the air buzzes with ambition and the sharp tang of ink. Polished jade ornaments gleam under torchlight, and you're surrounded by robed officials whispering about power. You're here to meet Kai Lun, the guy history credits with inventing paper, and trust me, his story's wilder than a scroll of bad poetry. You spot him, a sharp-eyed eunuch, navigating the snake pit of a palace with a nervous grin. Kai Lun's role as a court official is a mainstream fact, documented in the Ho Hanshu, the official history of the later Han. Born around 50 CE, he's a eunuch, meaning he's been surgically altered to serve the emperor without family ties muddying his loyalty. You watch him shuffle through the court, clutching a bamboo report, his robes swishing. He's not just a pen pusher. He's in charge of imperial workshops, overseeing everything from swords to scrolls. Joke 1. Why'd Kai Lun love his job? No kids to distract him from paperwork. You lean closer as Kai Lun inspects a pile of hemp rags, his brow furrowed. The empire's drowning in records. Bamboo's too heavy, silk's too pricey, and you can feel his frustration. Legend says he experiments with scraps like tree bark, fishnets, and cloth, mashing them into a pulp. Quirky tidbit. Some stories claim he tested his mix in secret, like a mad scientist brewing moonshine in the palace basement. Historians still argue whether Kai Lun invented paper from scratch or improved an existing process. You're skeptical, but his hands are stained with pulp, so he's definitely up to something. The court's a pressure cooker. You overhear officials mocking Kai Lun's useless experiments, and you wince. Failure here could cost him his head. Yet he keeps at it, driven by the empire's need for a cheaper writing medium. You imagine him sneaking to the workshops at night, grinding bark under moonlight. Joke 2. What's Kai Lun's nickname? The Pulp Prince. His breakthrough comes when he presents a thin, flexible sheet to Emperor He. You see the Emperor's eyes widen as he scribbles a test character. Smooth, light, cheap. It's a game changer. You wander past a bronze incense burner, its smoke curling like a dragon. Kai Lun's not just inventing paper, he's inventing a future. The mainstream impact is clear. His process, using plant fibers, makes writing accessible beyond the elite. The quirky bit? Some say he added fishnet scraps for strength, giving early paper a faint whiff of the sea. Scholars debate if his motives were practical or a bid for imperial favor. You feel the weight of his gamble. Success could reshape the empire, but the court's watching, and not everyone's a fan. As you leave the hall, the clink of jade fades. You glance back at Kai Lun, his face lit by determination, and wonder what's next. Joke 3. Why'd Kai Lun skip silk? He wasn't fancy enough for moths. You step into the night, the promise of paper lingering like the scent of fresh ink. The court's drama is heating up, and Kai Lun's not out of the woods yet. You linger in the shadows of the Han Dynasty court, around 105 CE, where the air crackles with intrigue and the faint smell of sandalwood incense. Torches cast flickering light on Kai Lun, the eunuch who's just sparked a revolution with his paper invention. But you're not here for victory laps. You're diving into the dangerous tightrope he walks as a eunuch in this cutthroat palace. One wrong move and he's toast. Kai Lun's precarious life as a court eunuch is a mainstream fact, noted in the Ho Hanshu, which details his rise and fall. You watch him navigate a room of silk-robed officials, their smiles sharp as knives. As a eunuch, he's trusted to serve Emperor He without personal ambition, but that's a lie. Everyone here's playing the game. His paper project isn't just a hobby. It's a high-stakes bid to prove his worth. Joke 1. Why's Kai Lun so tense? His job's a real cutthroat gig. You slip closer, noticing his guarded glances. Eunuchs are powerful, but despised, seen as half men by nobles who mock them behind their backs. Kai Lun's paper breakthrough could cement his legacy, but it's a gamble. You imagine him in the imperial workshops, testing pulp mixes while dodging spies. Quirky tidbit. Some say he bribed guards with rice wine to keep his experiments secret, like sneaking snacks past a dorm RA. Historians still argue whether his eunuch status gave him unique access to resources or made him a bigger target. You're betting it's both, given the sweat on his brow. The court's a viper's nest. You overhear a rival official, Do, whispering about Kai Lun's useless rags. The Do family's got the emperor's ear, and they don't like upstarts. Kai Lun's paper threatens their control over silk-based records, a pricey status symbol. You feel his isolation. Eunuchs can't have families, so he's got no allies to fall back on. Joke 2. What's a eunuch's worst enemy? A family reunion invite. Yet he pushes forward, presenting his paper to the emperor, who scribbles a decree and nods. It's a win, but you see Do's eyes narrow. Trouble's brewing. You pause by a jade screen, its carvings glinting like frozen waves. Kai Lun's not just fighting for paper, he's fighting for survival. The mainstream stakes are huge. His invention could streamline the empire's bureaucracy, cutting costs and boosting efficiency. The quirky bit? Some court gossip claimed his paper was cursed by jealous spirits, a rumor he had to squash fast. Scholars debate if his political savvy, not just his invention, got paper approved. You sense the pressure. He's one misstep from exile, or worse. As you slip out, the palace hums with whispers. You glance back at Kai Lun, his face a mask of calm, but his hands tremble. Joke 3. Why'd Kai Lun invent paper? To write his own escape plan. You step into the cool night, the court's tension clinging like damp silk. Paper's born, but now you're curious about how it's actually made. Time to get your hands dirty. You splash through a muddy courtyard in a Han Dynasty workshop around 105 CE, where the air's thick with the sour tang of fermenting hemp and the rhythmic thump of pestles. You're here to get your hands dirty, diving into the gritty process of how Kai Lun's paper comes to life. It's less glamorous than the palace. Think less silk robes, more stained aprons. But this is where the magic happens. Your sandals stick in the muck, and you're already regretting not bringing gloves. The paper-making process, credited to Kai Lun, is a mainstream fact outlined in later Han records, describing how he mashed plant fibers into a pulp to create sheets. You crouch beside a worker, pounding hemp rags with a wooden mallet, sweat dripping from her brow. The recipe's simple but brutal. Mix hemp, mulberry bark, and old rags. Soak them in water and bash them into a sludgy paste. You try stirring the mix, and it's like wrestling oatmeal with a vendetta. Joke 1. Why's paper making tough? It's a real pulp fiction. You move to the next step, where the pulp's scooped onto a bamboo screen, water dripping like a leaky faucet. The worker shakes the screen, fibers meshing into a thin, wet sheet. It's mesmerizing, but the smell, damp and faintly fishy, makes you gag. Quirky tidbit: some early paper batches used fish nets, giving sheets a weird, scaly texture that scribes cursed under their breath. Historians still argue whether Kai Lun perfected this process or scaled up older, cruder methods. You're leaning toward perfection, watching the worker's practiced hands lift a fragile sheet to dry in the sun. The labor's intense. You glance at a pile of mulberry bark, stripped from trees that take years to grow. Each sheet demands hours of soaking, pounding, and drying, and you're exhausted just watching. Joke 2. What's a paper maker's workout? Beating the pulp out of life. The workshop hums with activity. Dozens of workers churn out sheets to feed the empire's hungry bureaucracy. You realize this isn't just craft. It's industry, churning out a material lighter than bamboo and cheaper than silk. You pause by a drying rack where paper sheets flutter like pale flags. The mainstream impact is clear. This process makes writing scalable, letting clerks record taxes or poets scribble odes without breaking the bank. The quirky bit? Some workers added plant dyes for colored paper, a fancy touch for imperial edicts that probably sparked court envy. Scholars debate if the process's complexity slowed its spread or fueled its value. You feel the weight of each sheet, not heavy like bamboo, but heavy with potential. As you leave, the sun warms the drying sheets, casting a soft glow. You glance back at the workers, their hands never still, and think of Kai Lun's gamble paying off. Joke 3. Why'd the papermaker quit? She was tired of getting pulped. You step onto a dusty path, the workshop's rhythm fading, ready to see how this invention reshapes the empire. You weave through a bustling Han Dynasty city, circa 120 CE, where the streets pulse with the chatter of merchants and the clatter of ox carts. The air carries the sharp scent of fresh ink and something new. Paper, Kailun's game changer, now rippling through the empire. You're here to see how this flimsy sheet transforms China's bureaucracy and culture, turning dusty archives into engines of progress. Your sandals slap against cobblestones, and you're already dodging clerks, clutching stacks of paper like it's gold. Paper's adoption across the Han bureaucracy is a mainstream fact, evidenced by archaeological finds like paper documents from Dunhuang, dated to the early 2nd century. You slip into a government office where scribes scribble tax records on thin, creamy sheets. Gone are the days of hauling bamboo bundles, papers light, stackable, and cheap. You watch a clerk file a report in a fraction of the time it took with bamboo, and you're jealous of his wrist not screaming in pain. Joke 1. Why'd the clerk love paper? It saved his chiropractor bills. You wander to a scholar's stall, where paper scrolls spill with poetry and philosophy. The stuff's not just for bureaucrats, it's sparking a cultural boom. Students copy texts faster, and ideas spread like wildfire. Quirky tidbit: some early paper was so rough, scribes nicknamed it sandpaper, cursing as it snagged their brushes. Historians still argue whether paper's quick spread fueled literacy or just made elites more prolific. You're betting on both, seeing kids practice characters on scrap sheets in the street. The empire's humming now. You pass a courier stuffing paper dispatches into a satchel. Messages that once took oxen to haul now fit in a saddlebag. This speed reshapes governance, letting emperors issue decrees across vast provinces without delay. Joke 2. What's a Han courier's new motto? Paper, light load, heavy impact. You smirk, but the efficiency's no joke. Tax collections smoother. Military orders are clearer. And even local magistrates are less buried in backlog. You pause by a temple where monks copy sacred texts onto paper, their brushes dancing. The mainstream impact hits hard. Paper democratizes knowledge, letting more people read and write than ever before. The quirky bit: some temples use paper for spirit money, burned to honor ancestors, giving it a divine side hustle. Scholars debate if paper's cultural surge outpaced its bureaucratic one. You feel the shift. China's not just recording history, it's writing its future. As you leave, the city glows under lantern light. You glance at a scribe, his paper stack growing, and sense the empire's pulse quickening. Joke 3. Why'd paper win? It didn't weigh anyone down. You step into the night, the rustle of paper lingering, ready to question if Kai Lun really deserves all the credit. You slink through a quiet Han Dynasty archive around 150 CE, where the air's thick with the musty scent of drying paper and old secrets. Shelves groan under stacks of fresh sheets, a far cry from the bamboo piles you lugged ages ago. You're here to dig into a nagging question. Does Kai Lun really deserve all the credit for inventing paper? Or is history giving him too much shine? Your fingers graze a scroll, and you're ready to stir the pot. The debate over Kai Lun's role is a mainstream scholarly issue, rooted in the Hohanshu, which hails him as paper's inventor, but was written decades after his death. You sit beside a grizzled archivist, his hands ink-stained as he sorts paper records. The official story's neat. Kai Lun, clever eunuch, whips up paper in 105 CE, saves the empire. But you're skeptical. Older scraps, rough, hemp-based sheets from 200 BCE have turned up in Gansu, hinting paper might predate him. You smirk, imagining Kai Lun as the guy who just branded an old recipe. Joke 1. Why'd Kai Lun get the glory? He had the best PR team. You sift through a pile of brittle sheets, some so coarse they feel like tree bark. These pre-Kai fragments suggest artisans were messing with plant pulp long before his palace experiments. Quirky tidbit: some early paper was so lumpy, scribes used it as packing material, like ancient bubble wrap. Historians still argue whether Kai Lun invented paper outright or refined a crude process into something scalable. You're leaning toward refiner, watching the archivist marvel at the smooth, post-Kai sheets, his works clearly better than the old stuff. The catch is politics. You overhear clerks whisper about Kai Lun's fall. Tangled in court drama, he took his own life by 121 CE. His enemies might have downplayed earlier paper makers to boost his legend, or rivals could have hyped him to curry favor. You feel the weight of history's bias, like trying to fact-check a rumor with no Wi-Fi. Joke 2. What's an archivist's nightmare? A hero with a shaky resume. The mainstream view holds Kai Lun's process, mashing hemp, bark, and rags, was a leap forward, but you wonder if he stood on forgotten shoulders. You pause by a flickering oil lamp, its light dancing on paper stacks. The quirky bit? Some scholars say women, processing hemp for cloth, might have stumbled on pulp making first, only to be erased from the story. Scholars debate if Kai Lun's credit is a Han propaganda win or a fair nod to his scaling genius. you sense the truth's murky. Paper's a team effort, but history loves a single name. As you slip out, the archive silence hums with questions. You glance back at the archivist, still sorting, and think of Kai Lun's shadow looming large. Joke 3. Why'd Kai Lun get the statue? He wrote the best autobiography. You step into the cool night, the debate lingering like ink on your fingers, ready to trace paper's journey beyond China. You stand at a dusty Silk Road outpost around 300 CE, where the air's sharp with camel sweat and the tang of foreign spices. Merchants haggle over silk and jade, but you're here to track paper's slow, sneaky journey out of China, slipping through trade routes like a secret nobody meant to spill. Your robes dusted with sand, and you're squinting at a caravan loaded with goods. Somewhere in there, paper's hitching a ride. Paper's spread beyond China by the 3rd century is a mainstream fact, backed by finds like paper fragments in Central Asian sites, dated to the early century CE. You watch a trader tuck a paper scroll into his pack, its edges curling from the desert heat. China guards its secrets fiercely. Silk making's a state monopoly, and paper's not far behind. But traders aren't exactly signing NDAs. You smirk, imagining a Han official clutching his pearls as paper leaks westward. Joke 1. Why'd paper travel? It wanted to see the world before parchment stole its thunder. You sidle up to a Sogdian merchant, his accent thick, as he scribbles a contract on a rough sheet. Papers reached Central Asia, carried by monks, diplomats, and greedy middlemen. It's not the smooth stuff you saw in Han archives. This is cruder, made with local flax, but it's still lighter than parchment or papyrus. Quirky tidbit: some traders used paper for wrapping goods, so ancient fish might have been swaddled in Buddhist sutras. Historians still argue whether paper spread through deliberate tech transfer or accidental leaks. You're betting on leaks, seeing how casually the merchant tosses his sheet around. The journey's slow. You trudge alongside the caravan, the horizon shimmering. Paper doesn't hit the Islamic world until the 8th century, when Chinese prisoners, captured at the Battle of Talas, spill the recipe. You picture a Tang paper maker, sweating in a Samarkand workshop, teaching locals under duress. Joke 2. What's a paper secret worth? Not much when you're a POW. By then, paper's transforming record-keeping from Baghdad to Cordoba. But here, it's still a novelty, prized for its portability over heavy clay tablets. You pause by a roadside shrine, where a monk copies a prayer onto paper. The mainstream impact is clear. Paper's lightness fuels trade and scholarship, letting ideas cross borders faster. The quirky bit: early adopters in Central Asia used paper for kites, giving prayers a literal liftoff. Scholars debate if China's secrecy delayed global adoption or made paper's arrival more disruptive. You feel the shift. Paper's no longer just China's. It's the world's future. As you leave, the caravan fades into the dusk. You glance back at the merchant, his paper glowing under a lantern, and sense history pivoting. Joke 3. Why'd paper go global? It was tired of being a Han exclusive. You step into the starry night. The Silk Road's dust on your sandals, ready to reflect on paper's lasting mark. You sit cross-legged in a quiet Han Dynasty courtyard around 200 CE. The air soft with the scent of blooming lotus and the faint rustle of paper. Moonlight spills over a low table where a scribe's fresh sheet glows like a promise. You're here to reflect on paper's lasting impact, how it reshaped China and still touches your life today. Your fingers trace the edge of a scroll, and you're struck by how something so fragile changed everything. Paper's transformation of human history is a mainstream fact, seen in its role fueling China's bureaucracy, then spreading globally to spark learning and innovation. You glance at a stack of tax records, each sheet a tiny revolution, light, cheap, and endlessly versatile. Without paper, the Han Dynasty sprawl might have collapsed under bamboo's weight. You think of your own notebook, stuffed with doodles and grocery lists, and grin. It's Kai Lun's legacy, or whoever first mashed that pulp, still alive in every page you flip. Joke 1. Why's paper immortal? It's got more lives than your printer's ink cartridge. You lean back, picturing paper's ripple effect. In China, it birthed a golden age of poetry and scholarship. Globally, it fueled the printing press and scientific revolutions. Quirky tidbit: some Han officials used paper for origami-like crafts, folding tiny cranes for luck. Your middle school art project has ancient roots. Historians still argue whether paper's cultural impact outshone its practical one. You're betting on both, imagining a world stuck with clay tablets and wincing at the shipping costs. Your mind drifts to today. Papers in your books, your coffee filters, even the sticky notes on your fridge. You chuckle, remembering that crocodile dung sunscreen from another tale. Paper's less gross, but just as world-changing. It's not just utility. It's art, memory, connection. Joke 2. What's paper's secret? It's the only thing that survives your terrible handwriting. You feel a pang of gratitude for those sweaty workshop workers, pounding hemp so you could scribble your dreams. As you stand, the courtyard hums with night sounds. Paper's story isn't just history, it's yours. You think of the scribes, the Silk Road traders, the monks, all carrying this invention forward. The quirky bit? Some Han paper was scented with herbs, making letters a literal breath of fresh air. Scholars debate if paper's legacy is its accessibility or its role in empire building. You say it's both and more. You step out of the courtyard, the moon now high, casting a silver glow over the world. The scent of lotus lingers, soft and reassuring, as crickets hum a lullaby. You carry the weight of paper's story, its messy birth, its quiet triumphs, and it feels like a gift tucked into your heart. Picture yourself curling up under a blanket, the day's worries slipping away like ink washed from a brush. Each breath slows, heavy with calm, as you imagine a single sheet drifting on a breeze, carrying dreams across centuries. No need to chase answers tonight. The story's done its work, wrapping you in a gentle hush. Let your eyes grow heavy, your thoughts blur into starlight. You're part of this tale, connected to those ancient hands that pounded pulp under the same moon. Sleep's calling, warm and deep, ready to cradle you until morning whispers your name.